1932, Aldous Huxley published a book that terrified the intellectual world, not because of what it described, but because of how accurately it predicted us. Brave New World wasn't science fiction. It was a warning, a blueprint of how humanity would be conquered, not through force, not through war, but through pleasure, through comfort, through the slow, invisible death of wanting anything real. And in 1958, Huxley looked at the world and wrote, "We are in process of developing all the techniques for achieving the aims of the first dictators, but we are doing it through pleasure rather than through pain." He saw it happening. The conquest through comfort, the enslavement through entertainment, the destruction of the human soul, one distraction at a time. And here's what keeps me awake at night. Everything he warned about has come true. This is the Hidden Codex, where we uncover what they tried to bury. Aldous Huxley, 1894 to 1963. English writer, philosopher, visionary. Grandson of Thomas Huxley, Darwin's greatest defender. Brother of Julian Huxley, first director of UNESCO. He came from a family of intellectuals who shaped the modern world. But Aldous went further. He didn't just observe society. He dissected it, and what he found horrified him. To the public, Huxley wrote novels, beautiful prose about human nature and society. But to those paying attention, he was documenting the systematic destruction of human consciousness, the replacement of depth with surface, of meaning with sensation, of being with consuming. In Brave New World, he showed us a future where humans are engineered for happiness, where every desire is satisfied instantly, where discomfort is eliminated, where pain is forbidden, and everyone is miserable. But they don't know it, because they've forgotten what it means to be alive. For decades, people read it as dystopian fantasy, a cautionary tale of a future that would never come. Huxley knew better. He wrote in 1946, "The nightmare of total organization is already with us. Not coming. Already here. And it would only get worse." Tonight we explore what Huxley really saw. The invisible chains we wear willingly. The prison we call freedom. The death we call living. Before we go deeper into what Huxley discovered, if you sense that something is fundamentally wrong with modern life, if you feel the weight of a system designed to keep you numb, if you're ready to see the cage you've been living in, subscribe to the Hidden Codex. Turn on notifications, because what comes next cannot be unlearned. And most people aren't ready for that. But you're still here, so maybe you are. Let's continue. Huxley identified something in the 1930s, something that would become the foundation of modern control. He called it the technique of distraction, and it works like this. The human mind cannot hold two things at once. Not really. You think you can multitask? You can't. Your consciousness moves between points of focus, rapidly, seamlessly, but never simultaneously. And here's what Huxley realized. If you can control what people focus on, you control what they think, what they feel, what they believe. You control them. But there's a problem. Force people to focus on something, and they resist. Tell them what to think, and they rebel. So you do something else. You make them want to be distracted. You make pleasure so available, so immediate, so overwhelming, that they choose it over depth, over meaning, over reality itself. In Brave New World, this was Soma, a drug that made people happy, instantly, with no side effects, except one. It made them forget they were slaves. Huxley wrote, "A really efficient totalitarian state would be one in which the all-powerful executive of political bosses and their army of managers control a population of slaves who do not have to be coerced because they love their servitude." Read that again. They love their servitude, not forced into it, not tricked into it. They love it because their servitude feels like freedom. Their chains feel like comfort. Their prison feels like home. Now look around. How many people do you know who are genuinely happy? Not distracted, not numbed, not entertained. Actually, happy. How many people are alive? Really alive? Or are they just consuming, scrolling, watching, clicking, eating, buying, never stopping, never thinking, never feeling anything real? Because the moment they stop, the moment they're alone with themselves, they realize something terrifying. They don't know who they are anymore. Huxley saw this coming. In 1958, he wrote Brave New World Revisited. Not a novel, a warning. He looked at the world 26 years after his dystopia. and realized it wasn't dystopian anymore. It was a manual. He wrote, "The dictators of tomorrow will achieve control not through pain, but through systematically bringing about states of euphoria." Euphoria, not happiness. There's a difference. Happiness requires meaning, purpose, struggle, growth. Euphoria just requires stimulation, a dopamine hit, a notification, a like, a swipe, a click. And here's the thing about euphoria. The more you have, the more you need. It's not satisfaction. It's addiction. And Huxley knew. An addicted population doesn't revolt. It doesn't resist. It doesn't even notice that it's enslaved. So how does this work in practice? Let's say you're unhappy. You feel empty, disconnected, lost. Most people do this. They reach for the nearest source of pleasure. Phone, food, streaming, shopping, substance, sex. Something, anything, to make the feeling go away. And it works. For a moment, the emptiness fades. The anxiety quiets. The pain dulls. But then it comes back, stronger. So you reach again, and again, and again, until one day, you're not reaching to feel good anymore. You're reaching to avoid feeling bad. You're not living. You're just avoiding death. But if you understand Huxley's warning, you do something different. You sit with the discomfort. You face the emptiness. You ask the question, why am I running? And here's what happens. The answers start coming. Not pleasant answers, not easy answers, but real ones. You realize the emptiness isn't the problem. The emptiness is the signal. It's telling you, you're living a life that isn't yours. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. That's freedom. Not the fake freedom of infinite choice, but the real freedom of knowing who you are. Huxley wrote in his personal letters, "The most distressing thing that can happen to a prophet is to be proved right." He didn't want to be right about this, but he was, and he knew why. Because the technique isn't new. Throughout history, rulers discovered you can control people through fear, but fear makes them resentful, angry, eventually rebellious. Or you can control them through pleasure, and pleasure makes them grateful, loyal, dependent. Which would you choose? The answer is obvious, and that's what Huxley saw happening. Not in some distant future, but in his present, in ours. The systematic replacement of meaning with sensation, of truth with comfort, of consciousness with consumption. And most people never notice, because they're too busy being happy. 3 years after Brave New World Revisited, Huxley gave a lecture at Berkeley. He was older then, wearier, and he said something that most people ignored. There will be, in the next generation or so, a pharmacological method of making people love their servitude and producing dictatorship without tears, so to speak. Producing a kind of painless concentration camp for entire societies. A painless concentration camp. Think about that phrase. Not a place of suffering, a place of comfort, where everyone is fed, entertained, satisfied, but nobody is free, and nobody even knows they're imprisoned. Because the bars are invisible, made of dopamine, of distraction, of endless empty pleasure. Now here's where it gets truly disturbing. Huxley didn't just predict this. He explained why it would work, why humans would willingly walk into this cage. And the answer is simple. Because deep down, most people don't want to be free. Freedom is terrifying. It requires responsibility, choice, risk, failure, pain, growth. It requires you to become yourself. And that's the hardest thing a human being can do. So when offered a choice between freedom and comfort, between authenticity and ease, between meaning and pleasure, most people choose pleasure. Every time. Not because they're weak, but because they've been conditioned to believe pleasure is the same as happiness. Comfort is the same as peace. Distraction is the same as fulfillment. And by the time they realize the difference, it's too late. The capacity for deep feeling has atrophied. The ability to sit in silence has vanished. The courage to face themselves has died. And all that's left is the endless scroll, the infinite feed, the perpetual now, with no past, no future, no meaning, just sensation. Huxley warned about this in his final book, Island. He created a utopia, a society built on wisdom, consciousness, and genuine human connection. And in that book, he showed what destroys it. Not war, not tyranny, but the promise of easier pleasure, the seduction of instant gratification, the whisper that says, "Why work for meaning when you can have comfort now?" The islanders resist, for a while, but eventually they fall, because the call of easy pleasure is stronger than the call of difficult truth. And once you answer that call, you can't go back. Huxley knew this from experience. In his later years, he experimented with mescaline and LSD, not recreationally, but as research. He wanted to understand altered states of consciousness, to explore the doors of perception. And what he found both fascinated and horrified him. He discovered humans are capable of experiencing reality at depths most never access, states of consciousness beyond ordinary awareness, realms of being that transcend the mundane. But he also discovered most people would rather dull their consciousness than expand it, would rather shrink their awareness than stretch it, would rather live on the surface than dive deep. Because depth is uncomfortable, expansion is unsettling, truth is painful. So they choose the comfortable lie, the shallow pleasure, the safe numbness, and they call it living. In one of his last interviews, Huxley was asked, "Do you think humanity will survive?" He paused. Then he said, "I don't know. But I suspect the real question is, will humanity survive as humans or as something less? Something less. Not destroyed, not extinct, just diminished, hollowed out, reduced to biological machines that consume and produce and reproduce, but never truly live, never truly feel, never truly become what they could be." And here's what keeps me up at night. Look around. How many people do you see who are fully alive, who have depth, who feel things deeply, who think for themselves, who aren't just repeating what they've been told to think, feel, want, believe? How many? And how many are just going through motions, performing a script they didn't write, living a life they didn't choose, wanting things they don't actually want, chasing pleasures that don't actually satisfy, running from pain that would actually heal them? Huxley saw this trajectory, the slow death of the human soul, not through violence, but through comfort, through the systematic elimination of anything that challenges, anything that disturbs, anything that demands growth. In Brave New World, there's a character, the savage. He's the only one who wasn't raised in the dystopia. He still has the capacity for deep feeling, for suffering, for meaning. And when he sees the Brave New World, he's horrified, not by the pain, by the absence of it, by the comfortable emptiness, by people who have everything except a reason to live. And at the end, he chooses death, real death, over fake life, because he understands something the others forgot. A life without struggle is a life without meaning. A life without pain is a life without growth. A life without discomfort is a life without life. And when you eliminate all suffering, you don't create happiness, you create hollowness. So what does this mean for you? It means Huxley is asking you to pay attention to the patterns, to the systems, to the invisible forces shaping your desires. Because the conquest isn't happening through force. It's happening through your willing participation. Every time you choose the easy pleasure over the meaningful struggle, every time you reach for distraction instead of facing yourself, every time you numb the pain instead of learning from it, you're choosing servitude and calling it freedom. Huxley wrote in one of his final essays, "The price of freedom is eternal vigilance, not just against external enemies, but against the tyrant within ourselves who prefers comfort to consciousness." The tyrant within, not out there, in here. The part of you that wants to scroll, to consume, to avoid, to numb. The part that whispers, just this once, just for a moment, just to feel better. And before you know it, just this once becomes your entire life. And you wake up one day, comfortable, satisfied, entertained, and completely empty. That's the conquest Huxley warned about, not the one that kills you, the one that hollows you out, leaves you walking, talking, functioning, but not really alive. Just a biological machine, running programs, executing scripts, consuming content, producing nothing, feeling nothing, being nothing. And the worst part, you won't even know you lost, because you'll be too comfortable to notice, too distracted to care, too numb to feel the absence of yourself. Aldous Huxley saw something most still refuse to see. Not because it's complicated, but because it's unbearable. The realization that we are doing this to ourselves, that the cage is unlocked, that the chains are imaginary, that we could walk out at any time. But we don't. Because outside the cage, there's no one telling us what to want. No one giving us pleasure on demand. No one protecting us from discomfort. Outside the cage, we have to become ourselves. And that's the most terrifying thing of all. Huxley spent his final years writing about this, about the choice humanity faces, not between good and evil, but between depth and surface, between meaning and sensation, between being and consuming. And he knew most would choose wrong, not because they're bad people, but because they're comfortable people. And comfort is the most addictive drug ever created. The question now is, are you comfortable? Or are you alive? Are you consuming? Or are you creating? Are you distracted? Or are you present? Are you numb? Or are you feeling? Most people never ask these questions. They're too busy being happy. But you're still here. So maybe you're ready for something real. If this opened your eyes to the invisible prison we've built, hit that subscribe button. Because here at the Hidden Codex, we don't offer comfort. We offer truth. And truth is rarely comfortable. We go deeper. Into the shadows. Into the silence. Into the places most people are too afraid to look. Next time, we'll explore how Nietzsche predicted the rise of the last man, and why he believed it was worse than death itself. You don't want to miss that. Until then, stay awake. Stop scrolling. Put down the phone. Sit in the discomfort. Face yourself and ask, am I alive? Or am I just avoiding death? The answer will change everything.